Hello there, it's Joseph, and you are on episode 16 of my series Colonizing Kerbin, and we are starting this episode by returning our two SSTOs that delivered our 16 crew members to the ring station in low Kerbin orbit. And we've already sent off some of those crew members to our Mun colony. Now, when I deorbit my SSTO from this 110 kilometer high orbit, you can see that my periapsis is around 20 kilometers. I try to have that periapsis be a bit to the east of the Kerbal Space Center. And then as I enter the atmosphere, as you can see here, I try to keep the nose pointed as close to 10 degrees as I can. If the nose is too far down, then we're going to speed up too much, and that could overheat the command module and it could explode. If it's too high, it could create too much drag, or the craft could start flipping around, and that's why you see that raised ring above the nuclear engine there. It helps stabilize things a bit more. And then when I get close to the runway and I open up the landing gear, I bring out the air brake, and then when I touch down, I deploy these parachutes, which makes it slow down a little bit faster, but the brakes are usually pretty sufficient. And there we go, a safely landed SSTO. Now, when we bring the next SSTO down, it's basically going to be a carbon copy procedure of what you just saw. So lowering the periapsis down to about 20,000 kilometers. But as you can see, it's a bit farther to the east. I think when I did that, I was afraid I was going to undershoot the KSC, but I overcompensated and I shot it, just a bit. But it's actually really easy to fix this. I didn't overshoot too badly, but for some reason my parachute's deployed. I'm not sure why. It doesn't seem to me that I hit the action group number 9 that I had it set to, like in space, and just forgot about it. Because if I did, it should have deployed all the parachutes. So I really don't know why those parachutes deployed. It's kind of a mystery to me. And when I touch down here, since I've already deployed those parachutes, I forgot that it happened, and then half the parachutes deployed. Anyway, it was no big deal. But it was kind of weird that those parachutes just deployed out of nowhere. All right, so we are now back to the Mun ring station, and our Lunar transport is going to be returning to the Mun station, which is part of the reason why we deorbited the SSTOs. Because basically in this episode, I'm showing you how my transportation system has been set up, moving crew members from Kerbin to the Mun and to Minmus. And as you can see, I'm setting an encounter there. I got lucky. I was able to get an encounter with the space station immediately coming back from the Mun. And then I just fired retrograde to towards the target, relative to the target, and slowed down enough to dock. But then I noticed I had used up more fuel. It wasn't a very efficient way to return to low Kerbin orbit. So since I didn't have enough fuel to get that ship back to the Mun, which is the whole purpose of bringing the Lunar transport back, I decided, hey, let's expand the ring station, and we're going to add a fuel tanker to the ring station. So that way, when I bring Lunar transports back and I do a little less efficient way to return to low Kerbin orbit, I have a way to refuel it. So this is essentially the same fuel module that I used on the Mun ring station. So I just added it here and then reattached the docking module. Now you might be thinking to yourself, how are Kerbins going to climb through that that fuel tank? Well, in my headcanon, there is a crew like tunnel inside that fuel module so that people can go through there. It makes sense, right? Absolutely. All right, so now we have loaded up 4 more colonists for our Mun colony, and they are coming back to the Mun ring station. And the Lunar transport is going to dock. And at the same time, down on the surface of the Mun, our 2 pilots for the Lunar lander are getting into position to return to orbit to bring our new colonists back. And since there's no atmosphere on the Mun, they can take a few risks there. That was kind of a close call to the mountain range, but these are mavericks. These are pioneers. These Kerbins have no fear. Soundred and Traden. Yeah. All right, so now transferring those crew members over into the hitchhiker container. And we're going to undock and return to the surface of the Mun. So to do that, I kind of aggressively return to the Mun because the Mun doesn't rotate very quickly. And then firing the engines here so that I can land safely back at the base. And it was at this moment I realized, you might have noticed, look at the fuel. There is not enough fuel to get back into orbit. And when I realized that, I kind of kicked myself. It's like, man, do I have to go back to a quick save and redo that over again? And then I realized, no, I do not, because I thought ahead. This base, we're going to get to use our mining module on this base. So this base does come equipped with a mining module, which we're going to get to show off in this episode. And then for some reason, one of our engineers got stuck underneath the base trying to climb up and get back in. So we've deployed the drills, and these are the smaller drills in the game, so they don't drill very fast. But as you can see, I have a robot arm. I had to do a small little hop to get the lander just a little bit closer. And it's got a claw on it, so as soon as that claw touches the lander, it will be considered a part of the base. So here we go, extending the arm, change the camera, it tells me, yeah, we are now docked. So now that is part of the base, I turn on the fuel converters, which converts ore into fuel, and we can start refueling that lander. Now it's gonna take a while for that to refuel, but that's okay. It's gonna be a while before we bring more colonists back to the base. These 4 additional colonists were just there to help, increase our population. Now I decided to use one of my engineers to get rid of this decoupler that's been kind of hovering here a bit, but I had to take off all these little strut pieces first before I could finally move it. But yeah, so now that's down on the surface, it's out of the way, and now everyone's where they should be. And we have our scientists kind of hanging out in the science capsule there, kind of observing the surface of the Mun. All right, so back to the low Kerbin orbit research station. So we're going to deorbit one of the low Kerbin transports to make a little more room. The pilot is just returning, but our next launch, and as you can see, we're recruiting more Kerbins. We are going to, just like with the Mun, we are going to bring more colonists to the Minmus colony. So we have 4 more colonists that are going to go there. But in addition to that, since this is a mining base, the idea will be that we will also bring a few additional crew members from the research station. So right now we're actually on our way to the research station. So in a previous episode, I mentioned that we could use that research station as a gateway station, and I haven't really been doing that, kind of been bypassing it, but I decided, hey, let's kind of show off its use as a gateway station. It doesn't have very many crew on it, but we're just going to grab a couple of Kerbals from here, and we're going to take them with us to Minmus. All right, so while that upper stage is deorbiting, I just want to mention that I filmed a lot of footage for this episode. In fact, I filmed so much footage, I decided to break up this episode into 2 parts. So this is what I kind of consider part 1 of a 2-part episode. So in the next episode, you're going to see kind of the fruits of bringing these crew members to Minmus. And not only are we bringing these 6 additional Kerbins to Minmus to add additional population to the the mining station on the surface, but also to bring more of a population to this refueling station in orbit, because this refueling station also needs to be operated. All right, so back down on the surface, once again, our 2 pilots for the lunar lander are making their way towards this carbon copy of the lunar lander on the Mun. highly over-engineered for Minmus, so we won't have to worry about refueling it for some time since Minmus's gravity is so much lower than the Mun's. I think, if I remember right, Minmus, this is probably incorrect, but I think Minmus's gravity is like 1% that of Kerbin, whereas the Mun is more like 10%. Now on my way up, have to do a slight inclination change because the base is pretty close to the equator, but the the refueling station is more at like a 10 or 8 degree inclination. Part of that is because it's more in line with the orbit of Minmus, so that when spacecraft are coming into Minmus's sphere of influence, they don't have to make a lot of inclination adjustments to dock with the station. The inclination adjustments are more made when craft go to and from the surface of Minmus, which is less delta V consuming than when a spacecraft's coming in really fast from Kerbin orbit into Minmus orbit. All right, so the crew have been transferred, and this is the final leg of part 1. So we're going to end part 1 with bringing these crew members down to the surface of Minmus. And we left I believe I left 2 scientists up on the refueling station. They're going to man the science modules so that I can bring Kerbals from the surface of Minmus who have gained some experience, and I can use them to increase their experience using the science module. All right, so we have touched down, and now that our new crew, our new colonists have arrived on Minmus, they decided to step out and do a photo op to end this episode. That's right, they are going to stand there proudly, gazing off into the distance, the magical land of Minmus, and gaze at their new permanent home on this distant body and orbit of their home. Well, thank you all again for watching. Again, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and we'll see you again part 2 of this 2-parter, episode 17. I'll see you next week. So long, everyone.